All right. Okay.
Imani, it's you.
Well, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Imani Jasper, and she is the project coordinator at the Neighborhood Preservation, Inc., providing support to the Memphis Property Hub and the Blight Elimination Steering Team. As the coordinator of the Blight Elimination Steering Team, she coordinates the monthly meetings of the group and ensures progress is being made toward action goals. In addition to her work with the Blight Elimination Team, Imani coordinates ULI, which is Memphis Urban Plan Workshops, which are simulations of the planning and development processes designed to engage Memphians in the comprehensive development planning process. Since earning her bachelor degree with honors in urban and regional studies in 2016 and her master's in city and regional planning from Cornell University in 2018, Imani has continued to explore her various interests: adaptive reuse of buildings, property blight elimination, and robust community engagement. Thank you, Imani, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, and it's great to be involved in some robust community engagement right now. So a few things about me to start. As you might tell from my accent, I am a Yankee. I talk fast. I know I have a short amount of time today. You guys are going to have a lot of questions. I'm going to try and go through my presentation as quick as I can to leave time for questions. But if I go too fast, someone just unmute or yell out what, and I'll go back. It's something I'm working on, but I absolutely want to make sure that I'm getting you all the information that you need. So I'm going to start my presentation with a little bit of an overview of who NPI is, what work we're involved in, and then give you the big picture, some of the causes of blight, some of the effects of blight. I know we have at least one realtor in the audience, so he knows about the financial effects of property blight in neighborhoods, before going through some of the common approaches to addressing property blight that community members like yourself can get involved in. I'm going to try and leave some time at the end for questions, and so I'm going to jump on in. So NPI stands for Neighborhood Preservation, Inc. We are a 10-year-old nonprofit focused on addressing the systems that create and sustain vacant and abandoned property. I like to think that NPI also stands for Networking, Policy, and Innovation, and those are our three main program areas. Networking. Are we in the right groups that we need to be? Are we working collaboratively, collectively to address this big and important issue? How are we collaborating with our partners? How else can we join together to have a greater impact? That manifests itself in programs like the Blight Elimination Steering Team, which you're going to hear a little bit about later, and things like the Healthy Homes Partnership we're working on with LeBonner and the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative, things like the Joint Mayor's Environmental Team addressing the worst of the worst properties, things like that. We also do a good amount of policy work, whether that's the local, like the state level, to make sure that our legislators, our code enforcement officers, they have the tools that they need to address these properties within the court system. And also innovation. What's something that we can, help get started, get on the ground as a test project, whether that's our native hardwood tree nursery farm that we're involved in, seeing how we can use vacant lots as sort of nurseries for trees, because if you're growing in buckets, you can do that pretty much anywhere, or getting more involved in newer affordable housing projects and funding those in Memphis. So we're doing a lot in a couple different ways to address property blight. That's an overview of NPI. If you want to learn more about any of those program areas, you can check out our website, which is www.npimemphis.org. So, see, I told you I talk fast. So into the meat of the presentation, which is vacancy and abandonment in Memphis. We've all seen properties that seem to be a little abandoned. We've seen things that are overgrown. We've probably all seen tires and dumping. You may wonder, well, how did this happen? How did we get here? So the story of blight in Memphis gets a little bit complicated, but we have this way that we can sort of break it down into sort of 4 stages, right? So there's the growth and expansion of territory. Some of you probably remember when Memphis got into its big annexation kick. I was taking on more and more land, building more into the suburbs. The city was getting bigger. So you have a physical growth and expansion of territory. And as new homes are built in other parts of the city, people move. So you have a population that sort of shifts and is moving to different parts of the city from where they were maybe originally closer to downtown in the original core of Memphis, inside the parkways or in the 240 loop. So you have roughly Same amount of population in a much larger area leads to a decrease in population density, which, long story short, means that there are far more homes than there are people. And so the homes that don't have people in them that maybe are being taken care of, you have a lot of atrophy in core neighborhoods, just people, resources, care just leaching out of those neighborhoods. You have a decrease in property values as neighborhoods become less desirable. You have deferred maintenance on properties that remain, so maybe folks don't have the equity that they were relying on to be able to keep their home updated. And then there's also becomes limited enforcement resources because you have a much larger city and a roughly same amount of personnel. It's harder to maintain that same quality of social services, whether that's code enforcement, whether that's things like trash pickup, lawn, grass cutting, things like that. Some of those things just start to dwindle, which relates to what we see now. So how does that affect Memphis? There's a financial cost to the city and the county in terms of cutting grass, a property that's not being cut on its own. We know we got one heck of a growing season. My tomatoes were doing fantastic this summer, so was the grass in the yard. So you have a long time for nuisance plants to grow. If the homes aren't boarded up and secure, the county's got to go out and do that too. They've had a growing issue with some fires and abandoned property. So there's significant cost, municipal costs. There's also significant costs in lost property taxes, about millions and millions of dollars in lost property taxes. Pop quiz time. Why do those lost taxes matter? What do they fund? What could they fund? Schools, roads, all those wonderful things. It's okay, I've done this enough time. I can supply my own answer. So all these things that we like our governments to fund, all the things that were funded from property taxes, if they don't have that money, they can't fund it to the same extent. When we all want well-funded schools, we want well-maintained roads, we want well-maintained sidewalks, we want all those wonderful pickups and things, services that we're used to, and you can't have all those things if you don't have the money to pay for them. Vacant and abandoned property, it invites problem activity. If someone thinks they can get into a property and do whatever they need to or hide something in there, it creates an enormous nuisance for the neighbors. It gets MPD involved. It involves a lot of problems. So there's a civic cost as well. It also hurts community morale. You know, if you care about your house and you love your house and you love getting out and working on it, and then there's that one house right across the street where there's just trash on trash on trash and building materials, and it's falling down, and it's can get to a point where it's, well, I'm putting so much effort into my home and then the rest of the neighborhood still looks like this, it can really hurt the community morale. It also overall hurts the ability to attract new people and businesses. If we're, you know, Memphis is trying to get our momentum, we're gritting and grinding. It's hard, it gets harder to do that if you have this sort of stubborn physical visual problem in neighborhoods, like sort of preventing that investment and preventing that attention from coming. There's also some really significant health impacts, which I'll come back to later if you all have questions on those. So what is MPI doing about it? What's the city doing about it? What's the county doing about it? The good news is that everybody knows it's a problem. It's not we're past the debate of, well, is this really that big of an issue? It's an issue. So in 2016, we created the Blight Elimination Charter, which was the first document of its kind. That's everyone coming together, public entities, private entities, governmental entities, nonprofits, funders, coming down at the table and putting together a community response to blight in 4 target areas. So the 4 subcommittees / target areas are data, code enforcement, reclaim and reuse of vacant property, and community engagement. Those are the 4 ways that we interact with blight through this team, this Blight Elimination Steering Team. The acronym is BEST. Yes, I make puns all of the time. We're the best group ever. So I'm gonna go through a little bit and let you know what some of these groups are working on, just so you know if any of these resources stand out to you. You can follow up and ask me more about them later. Our data committee, if you're going to solve a problem, you better be able to quantify it and know what it is. So they're cataloging, understanding, monitoring blighted property in Memphis. They're creating a data dictionary using publicly available data source. They're also putting together a repository of all the studies and reports about blight. So if you have a question and it's something that they've already studied at the University of Memphis, you can just go to that source, pull that study, and not have to try to try and recreate that study on your own if you're interested in that sort of information. Code enforcement, improving efficiency and coordination of code enforcement, supporting them as they improve their system, how to better support them. So we're working with them to promote a more strategic focus within the Memphis 3.0 plan and the anchor areas to improve their activities in those specific places, really coordinate their response based on existing priorities. Reclaim and reuse of vacant land and buildings. They're working, they're continuing their citizen advocacy approach to their top 20 vacant and abandoned multifamily list, started as top 10, grew to top 13/20 based off of generally which is what they saw. So that approach is when they're able to be in contact with community groups around an abandoned multifamily complex to see if they need to come into environmental court and advocate for their community, if they would like to make a statement, make sure that they're able to do that, because that's been really impactful in the past in getting action on these properties. They're also collaborating with the data committee to beef up the Home 901 website, which I would really encourage all of you to take a look at, specifically the home buying resources on that page. It's a great source as well. And our community engagement committee is based on engaging neighborhoods, everyone as partners to resolve blighted properties, because we can see it's an issue citywide, but you know what the issues are on your block. You want to make sure that you are empowered and you know what resources and tools you have to address those properties. They did a pilot project this last year with the Klondike neighborhood to work on outside the cart issues with dumping. Outside the cart, basically anything that doesn't fit in your trash can, and there can be confusion and different rules about what goes outside when, what resources are available to help them cut down on like the perception of junkiness in the neighborhood and any dumping by just getting rid of the stuff that gets put out just out of confusion, and that can be handled that way. So that got put on pause a little bit due to COVID, but they're still working on how to get that restarted. So that's generally what we're doing about it in our citywide approach. If you're looking at your community and what can you do about it? First of all, brief plug. We're having a neighborhood preservation summit in early October. These are going to be workshops on how you can get involved with your community and how you can create a difference on your block. The workshops are going to be community/community. That's going to be focusing on home buying and home ownership under 50,000, recognizing that property values are low in some neighborhoods, and that might be a different part of the home buying process than generally gets talked about. And also neighborhood advocacy. How do you and get your neighborhoods together, build a coalition to advocate for what you need? Our data work group is going to be talking about how you make data work for you using the existing publicly available data tools to answer common questions. Reclaim and reuse is going to be talking about dirt to design, talking about vacant lot activation toolkits and how you can get started with that. And our code enforcement committee is going to be talking about 6 ways how you cannot be declared a public nuisance, looking at the most common ways that public nuisances are determined and how you can avoid being that property. You can register at the link here. If you can't copy that down, I'll put it in the chat, but the best website is memphisfightsblight.com, memphisfightsblight.com. And on the menu bar, there'll be a button for the Neighborhood Preservation Summit. I highly recommend you all attend. The workshops are just $5 each. There's a discount if you attend all of them. And I also encourage you to nominate a community leader of yours for an award. If they have a really great property, if they're a really great leader, if your neighborhood has done really great work in addressing property blight, nominate them. We do hand out awards, and we'd love to see our communities be celebrated. So if you, but outside of these learning opportunities, you always want to start with reporting blight to 311. Yes, they're working on getting that app better. Yes, it can get confusing sometimes if you want to go back and look at how you've reported a property, but it always has to start with a 311 complaint, because if you don't give them the 311 complaint, they don't have any way to track it down. You're also going to need to be as specific as possible with the address. A lot of times it's easy to write things down colloquially, like it's the red house on this intersection, or oh, it's the one behind Miss So-and-so's house. That inspector doesn't know Miss So-and-so. It might be a couple blue houses on that intersection. So just be as specific as possible with the address. Even if you don't know it, figure out it's directly east of 123 Main Street or whatever it is, as specific as possible. There have been issues in the past with someone saying like, oh, it's under the MPA, it's an environmental court. Well, how do I get more information on that? They started posting those cases on their website, as well as properties that are eligible for receivership. And we will get to that later in the presentation, but they've been beefing up the environmental court website so you can get more information on properties being prosecuted as public nuisances. If you have a property and you know what you want to do, you just need to get the money to put something together for it. IOB is a great resource for crowdfunding. They periodically do, matching where they'll match, every dollar that you raise in your own community for a project. I think we've done that with our partners to get murals done on the fences on some of our gardens. Crowdfunding is a great resource. In terms of other funding resources, some of those are going to be influx as city budgets are probably going to look a little bit different as we come out of COVID with shifting budget priorities. But in general, there's resources available through the Memphis City Beautiful often funds beautification projects. I check with the if there's any CDCs in a particular neighborhood. Some of them have funding. For example, the Fraser community, Fraser CDC is offering micro grants for, small vacant lot improvement projects like $500. But, if that helps you get the grass cut in a DIY fence up, that's something. There's also some larger grants available for commercial spaces through either the Downtown Memphis Commission or Community Lift. If you're interested in those, I can talk about that more in the Q&A. These are some other examples of just funding opportunities for blighted property that you're looking to address. So those are some of the more standard ones, but sometimes we have to get creative. Right, sometimes we have to pull things together ourselves, like, well, this is nice, but we're going to be working with volunteers, or we just want to garden, or this would be a great place for a mural. How do you make those things happen? Clean Memphis is a great resource for organizing a community cleanup. They have a mobile tool shed that they'll lend materials for. You just bring the volunteers and they'll bring the stuff. They're a great organization if their main issue with your property blight is litter or trash related. Memphis City Beautiful is also a really great resource. Again, they have those community improvement grants. They're also really great to help get the word out, get things clean. If you're working with the school, Clean Memphis also has like an educational program in schools where they can talk about litter and its impact on the environment and how to become a better steward of your neighborhood. You can always report littering, and if you want to adopt a block or adopt a park, I'd encourage you to do so. That's a really great way to like establish ownership or like pride in a community space by having your block volunteer to go out and consistently maintain it. If you're interested in saying like, hey, this would be a great place for like a public art project, specifically if it's owned by the county land bank, the Urban Art Commission has done projects in the past called Blight Out, which is basically art projects in public places. And they might have some funding available and connections with artists too to get something started there. So these are just some case studies from the Blight Out thing. So they had some artists that matched with them. They developed designs with the community, and then they created pieces like this. So it's not just empty side of a building or vacant building. It's called a mural. These are some other ones they did. Murals are very big, but if it's something different, like we just need to have like a neighborhood banner or maybe like a sculpture thing on this one corner, it's flexible because it's art, right? So back to code enforcement. This is where people have a lot of technical questions. For the record, I don't work with Department of Public Works, but this is the best that I know about their system. So these are their most common violations. If you want to start with like the low hanging fruit, City Beautiful has these door knockers with these top 10 violations that they can send out. So things you're like, well, I don't like that, but is that a personal thing or is that a code violation? If it's a auto repair shop, it needs to be an auto repair shop. You can't do that out of your house. That's a common. People are like, well, I can just, so it's my home business, not if it's auto repair. They like to do that in an actual shop just because of the environmental concerns. Other things that are a little more obvious, like accumulation of junk and debris, open storage of things, inoperable vehicles. That one isn't anything like an inspection. They just, the car should be able to like just turn it on when the inspector comes out. Excessive weeds, that's a big one, just because it's a full-time job keeping up with property and grass in the summer. That's a big one. Substandard structures, and some other things here. You all are reading this, and I think I sent my slides out, so you'll have access to this after if you want to go back and print this out. So that's the big overview of what you can do about Blight, what we're doing about Blight. I wanted to leave time for some questions, and oh my goodness, I have 2 minutes to spare. So how else can I help you address property blight in your community?
I've got a question. Well, it's a scenario. I had a gentleman call our office. He had some property that was condemned, and they came in and bulldozed his house. And the property was only worth $5,000 or $6,000. but a lien was put on the property for $5,000 to cover the bulldozer service.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have the money to pay that. And he was calling our office asking for help with that and what to do, because the property caused him not to be able to qualify for government benefits that he needed desperately. I know that's a complicated one.
Yeah, so that's a tough one there. So when the property is condemned by the city, it's the lien that they put on it just to recover their own demolition costs. So if you can't pay that, it just gets added as part of like the tax delinquency of the property, to where eventually it can go into the Shelby County Land Bank. What he could do is reach out to the land bank about deeding it to them. I believe they have the ability to clear taxes to the property, but if he no longer wants to own the property, that's a solution. If he wants to keep it, but still doesn't have the money, I currently am not aware of a resource where he could get those taxes waived, but I can check with the rest of the team and see if there's anything else that would be applicable to his situation.
That would be nice. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yes, Imani, a lot of great information, and yes, you do talk fast. Can you readdress the Memphis Neighborhood Summit? I think that was some good information, something that I would actually be interested in. Excellent.
So the Neighborhood Preservation Summit is hosted by the Blight Elimination Steering Team every 18 months. 18 months ish. We did it a two-parter last year, and so we're just doing it in one this year. So the workshops are going to be held the first 2 weeks of October. So that's October 4th, 6th, 8th, and 13th. And then the 13th, we did Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but then the following Monday is Columbus Day. So then we have to just put it on Wednesday because don't want to try and schedule anything on a day anyone had off. So those are 4 workshops spread out across 4 days. The schedule is on our website, memphisfightsblight.com. It's $5 each to attend virtually. We have a in-person option. We're trying to solidify everything, make sure with the COVID numbers that we're going to be able to still have it in person. But those, again, those workshops are going to be organized by the 4 different committees of BEST. So there's going to be one from the community engagement lens about advocating for your community, and also home ownership, because that is a very reliable way to like increase sort of like people's commitment to neighborhoods is by owning a home in there. Not to say that renters don't care about their communities, but it's different when you're the owner and you occupy the home and you are allowed to make improvements to it. It's just a different legal relationship to the property. There's going to be one from the code enforcement lens. So if we're talking about declaring things a public nuisance in environmental court and what that process looks like, that's going to be a panel discussion with someone from the court, someone from the neighborhood preservation clinic at the law school, someone from the city attorney's office sitting and talking about, you know, what these nuisances are, making sure folks can like identify one, like what's a nuisance versus what's something that like that house is painted a crazy color. Some things are objective, some things are not. So making sure people are like, aware of just the differences in that way, and also talking about sort of like what the opportunities are to abate the nuisance in a property, whether that's receivership, whether that's other resources people will have access to, financial or otherwise, to address public nuisance property. One from the reclaim and reuse lens, we have a whole lot of vacant lots in Memphis. There's plenty of vacant lots in Memphis. So what do you do to activate a vacant lot if you personally can't go out and build a house right now? What are some different strategies based on what they're saying in our comprehensive plan about whether it's an anchor or not, and also what are some things you can do based on what your budget is, based on what your basically your skill level or your time commitment can be. So for example, if you have like an hour a week to spend on this, we're not going to tell you to start a community garden, because that's way more than an hour a week. Maybe it's something like more like desert landscaping where there's more like rocks and succulents, or maybe it's something like a playground with, you know, some equipment, or it's just like a place where you can sit, there's a couple benches and somebody can come out and mow the grass. Like there's different ways to activate vacant space that don't always have to be very expensive. They don't have to be, you know, like the HGTV style. You coming in with a great big bulldozers. There's different scales of interaction you can do on these lots. And then we're also going to have, oh goodness, we don't forget about data. So a lot of times people will say, well, how do I know who owns this property? Like, I know it's terrible, but like, who owns this? How do I contact them? Or how can I tell if like my home is in the service area for this one grant, for this other opportunity? And how do I get this information? So there's a lot of publicly available data tools. This is how you make them work for you. So if this is your question, this is how you answer it with this tool. I think they're going to try and have like a one pager at the end of that, so you can follow through and be like, okay, so I saw them do this and I know how to do this. That workshop will not have an in-person component, just because you don't get much more from watching someone do something on a screen in Zoom or in the room with them. It's still largely just following along with somebody in a computer on a web browser. So that one's going to be all virtual, but yeah, so those are an overview of our workshops. Again, the full schedule and all the other information we found on our website. In terms of the awards, I would like to talk more about them because the nomination window closes on the 24th. We give out awards to leadership impact, someone in your organization that's working hard in their role to address property blight, a grassroots leader, somebody making great impact, but they're not getting paid to do it. It's just volunteer. They care about the issue. If there's a residential or commercial property in your neighborhood that's had a fantastic impact on the aesthetics, and you can tell it's inspiring others to take better care of their property, nominate them for an award. And also we have a neighborhood achievement. So if the neighborhood has taken, or organization has taken significant steps. So for last year, our winners were Alcee Ball and then Gethsemane Garden Kojic, which is a church, but again, in their community, they were putting on, I think, workshops every day for like months, every week for like months, just to encourage people about what they could do to improve the community. We also have a new award this year in honor of like our founding board chairman, unfortunately passed away earlier this year in a very tragic accident. And so we're having an award in his honor, Developer of the Year, someone who's made a significant impact in developing affordable housing, quality affordable housing in Memphis. So a really great developer. We want to honor someone, really continue his legacy. So if you have an idea of someone to nominate for an award, if you want to come and learn, please come join us. We'd love to have you at the 2021 Memphis Neighborhood Preservation Summit.
Well, again, a lot of information. So if I know Troy's ready to take back over, but please put that website in the chat so that we have it. Because again, you shared a lot of information and it was hard to retain it all. So
Yeah.
Joe, how are we doing for time?
We've got about 8 minutes.
8 minutes? Okay, I was going to ask a question. So
I got a different question than yours.
okay, Imani, congratulations on graduating with honors. Very impressive.
Thank you.
I was responsible for a guy getting on the honor roll because the teacher I was in graded on the curve. So he thanked me in my class. He just thanked me for getting to be student, and I made the honor roll thanks to you, Troy. My question is, we had the current mayor of Memphis about, I want to say about 2 years ago come by. We talked about blight in our MIG meeting, Memphis Investors Group, and we had two ideas. One is he felt like we had a little more powerful addressing blight because we had attorneys on staff now, Imani. But the other thing is, one of the suggestions that one of the guys is maybe have our police department, when they're running through neighborhoods and they see some depressed properties, actually write down the address, not doing any enforcement, but send that to the code enforcement. So we're using our police when they see some properties that are really struggling, is use the police when they're running through these neighborhoods, is to copy down the address and send it to code enforcement. Well, we've never heard anything further from our mayor on that, but we did hear that I think he had 1 or 2 attorneys that were joining code enforcement. Could I get your thoughts on that, please?
So for the first idea about partnering with MPD about getting addresses to send to code enforcement, I don't know if I haven't heard of any movement on that idea. What may have been an issue is just if they're making it part of their official notes because of the nature of how they do investigations, it gets difficult for them to share their information with others because of the names and address. Like not everything that they write down can be public record. So sometimes there's issues with just data sharing. If it's just a matter of them just putting it on a piece of paper and sending that to code, that might work as well. I'm gonna touch back in with Mr. Schuler in his community engagement office to see if they have a record of how that discussion went. So he would be a good person. Let me make my own notes. With a pen that works, Imani, that would help. And then the second part of your question was, ooh, I lost that.
Attorneys on staff.
Right.
Attorneys on staff. So yes, and I know one of them. So there are now attorneys like working within with Public Works, with the inspectors, basically getting their helping getting their notes ready to file the suit against the against the blighted property. So they do have attorneys on their staff now to make sure that that process is working well. So that has happened.
I've got a quick question, and have you any works with United Housing? Because United Housing does a great job. Everyone in the audience needs to know that people that fall in a certain income bracket can get repair loans. Plus, their goal is to get everybody a homeowner in Memphis, Tennessee, and they do a great job teaching people how to be first-time home buyers.
Yes, we do work with United Housing. They have a great program. Their homebuyer education courses are fantastic. I think they're certified HUD counselors. So if you're getting any down payment assistance from the state, they're one of the places you can go to complete that class requirement. They have a great number of aging in place programs. They do have their home repair loans. I think they were granted in the last round of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to go out and rehab some single family homes. I recently got to tour one that they recently finished for a veteran, disabled veteran, and it was a beautiful home that they managed to get in rehab for him. They do a fantastic job. So they're an absolutely great organization and resource in Memphis. I'd encourage everyone to look them up. I think they're also a really big partner in that Home 901 website. And making sure resources are out there and people are knowledgeable about the home buying process in Memphis, all the resources, as well as the home buyer education corners that they're setting up within the library system.
Wonderfully done. Joe, I think it's about time. Imani, let's hear it. I thought it was wonderful information.
Thank you so much for